are some aspects of advancing years that are mostly seen as disadvantageous. Those occasions, for example, when achy legs, tiredness, or maybe just plain laziness prevent you from keeping up with your younger and fitter birding buddies. Just sometimes, however, this can work in your favour. Now, one such time was on the last morning of a full-on birding week in the Gambia. The others had set off for a final trek around the locality. As is customary on the last night of a trip, we'd indulged in maybe one or two more jewel brews than was strictly necessary. Now, jewel brew is a beer that has a woodland kingfisher on its label, and it's a must for non-teetotal birders. Consequently, I was feeling a touch fragile. I decided that I would just stroll down to the nearby paddyfields and sit in the shade and see what turned up. I chose to sit by an unprepossessing, small, flooded rice paddy, no larger than a tennis court, with a large heap of rotting vegetation piled up in the middle, surrounded by rank sedges, reeds and low scrub. 2 young African spoonbills had flown off as I approached, but almost immediately returned and started to sweep the muddy water with their preposterous bills. Their feeding was not without rancour, and each seemed to be occupying the space that the other one wanted. A greenshank stalked around the margins and stood right in front of me, preening, before resuming its hunt for fry. It was joined by a long-tailed cormorant, and for a while the 2 birds appeared to hunt in tandem, the greenshank swimming alongside the cormorant when the water got too deep for wading. The cormorant got lucky, and it surfaced with a fish that was larger than its head, and much too big to handle in the water. It hauled out onto the island, and as it dropped the fish to make it easier to manage, it was mugged by an intermediate heron that snatched the plump fish up and then swallowed it whole. The cormorant, looking rather dejected, stood about on the island and dried out its wings in what seemed to be a rather sulky way. The intermediate heron was not the only member of its family present, although it was the largest. The next down in size was a western reef heron, slaty grey, with a pale throat and grey legs shading down to yellow feet. It seemed to spend a lot of time with its mouth open, as if permanently startled. The third one down was certainly the most extraordinary, a black egret sometimes known as the umbrella bird. It hunches over, spreading its wings, and so creates an area of shade. With its head beneath its wings, it then perfectly positioned to prey on the fish seeking out its treacherous shelter. It's quite an incredible piece of behaviour to see, and even more amazing when it's being performed right in front of you, a mere few metres away. A smaller, shyer squacco heron flew in, but stayed on the opposite side of the pool, and then an even smaller striated or little green heron, creeping about in the longer grass with a stooped and surreptitious gait. It looked shifty, as if carrying around a dreadful, guilty secret. Every so often a malachite kingfisher would whiz past and perch on the mangroves behind me, or on top of the island, and its larger pied cousin frequently hovered over the pool and several times emerged with a meal. I watched for some time, but failed to see the malachite catch anything. Maybe the water was too turgid, or the fish in it were too big. Not all the action was happening out on the water. 2 little bee-eaters made frequent forays across the pool to snap up dragonflies and other flying insects. A zitting cesticola buzzed and muttered from the large patch of dead grass, occasionally appearing in the open and then shuffling back down into the undergrowth. Best of all was an oriole warbler, a bird I hadn't seen at all well before. A slight movement gave it away, and I spotted it sitting quietly amid the spikes and spines of the palm under which I was sheltering, just soaking up the sun. I whiled away an hour or so just watching the interactions, the comings and the goings, and the real variety of life there. There must have been a lot of fish living in this pond, indicated by the numbers that I saw being eaten. The water looked murky, but it must support a lot of invertebrate life in order to sustain the fish population and in turn all the fish eaters. We take pictures as a way of remembering places and events, but some are impossible to photograph. One such thing is that very distinctive tropical smell, not wholly unpleasant, but green, fertile and heavy. A combination of the humidity, the decaying vegetation and the glutinous black mud of the mangrove swamp behind me. My friends found me and we wandered back to the hotel to finish packing and to pick up our coach for the airport. Of course, they too had found and seen interesting things, but I felt lucky to have had the chance to see this amazing, fertile environment up close. Oh, and you'll be pleased to hear, my headache had completely disappeared.